Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Illini Audible podcast. My name is Saeed Bravo. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the pod. As always, I really appreciate it. And we're back. We have a lot to dive into after what was in a pretty remarkable Illinois football game against Duke and Durham. And we saw a lot of things that were very encouraging about this team. To be fair, we also did see a lot of things that were kind of questionable, especially in that first half. Obviously, Brett Bielema said this in the post game, but a tale of two halves. But a lot to dive into. Really excited to get into all this, uh, all that we saw against Duke. And yeah, obviously, I wasn't at the game, but the broadcast I watched was glued to the TV. Did my recap and obviously things like that. So just a lot to really dive into, and just excited to get into a lot of this. Obviously, the takeaway in this 45-19 just routing of Duke, and we came in thinking that this could be a game that Illinois could fall into, and it could be a sneaky upset. Like a lot of us, like our predictions, and most of our predictions were around the same ballpark, 24-21, 28-20, that sort of thing. And it turned out to be a completely just uneven game at the end of it. I will say I do think the scoreboard doesn't reflect how close it, initially was. Obviously, it's a game of four quarters, but you know, I do think that a lot of the dominance was obviously on the defensive side, but then Illinois got itself going in the second half offensively as well. But it's the point is that we came into this game thinking that there might have been things that would concern you as Illinois fans, would concern us, the media, and you guys. And it turned out to be that Illinois was ready. And even though they took a little bit to kind of uh, offensively get everything together, and we saw a couple adjustments made based on the looks that the offense from Duke was giving and Darian Mensah. Then after that, you felt comfortable. If you're Illinois, if you're an Illinois fan, you guys felt comfortable about where this team was at. And so there was a lot of encouraging things. But obviously, the headliner is just five turnovers, right? Five turnovers against this Duke team. Yeah, when you win the turnover margin, you're gonna win. Like odds are you're gonna win the game. And Illinois did an excellent job at forcing those turnovers, and they did it in a variety of different ways. So that was encouraging to see. And another thing I wanted to touch on is the fact that on the road in a musty day in Durham. Obviously, I wasn't there, but you could tell visually it was just hot. The South and all that. Like it was definitely encouraging to see the way that this team played under those circumstances. I do think that the stadium was a little bit. It did seem empty. It didn't seem like there. And obviously, it's Duke, but it's a basketball school. But it just seemed a little bit empty to me. But obviously, Illinois fans showed out as well, and so that was encouraging to see. But back to the turnovers, right? If you win the turnover margin, then odds are you're going to win the game. And Jesus, did Illinois win the turnover margin? We had the first turnover, the muffed punt, recovery by Tyler Strain. Man, what a moment for that guy, right? A guy who just mostly special teams, gets action in special teams, and a guy who ended up playing really what got that fumble recovery. Like it's really encouraging to see for him. I'm actually really happy for the guy. It felt like through the broadcast, it felt like there was a moment where he was just kind of realizing that he had what the opportunity was right there in front of him. And credit to him, he jumped on the ball. And so that part of it was cool as well. The second one was the Gabe Akers strip fumble. That's that's what you want to see from this particular guy. That's what you come to expect from Gabe Akers in this game, in atmospheres like this. Obviously, he had a really good time against Western Illinois. Now a step up in competition, and he would manage to do similar things. Now, I will say for the most part, I don't think he was really, you don't really see him on the field, but, credit to him, you saw a lot of things that were encouraging. And obviously, this is a guy who you expect that, like the guy who we've talked about should be in the NFL, and he's making those strip sacks. Really good stuff right there as well. Matthew Bailey with a forced fumble. And he also, I believe, he had a forced fumble recovery, I believe, as well. But that's another guy that you come to expect this sort of thing. And the offense just was in their bag today, and so that's something as well that you come away thinking, well, that if the defense can play like this always, then Illinois should be in store for a good day. And we'll get into a little bit of the nitty gritty in terms of what we saw overall from the defense this time around, Matt. But Tanner Heckel, right, a guy who is a sophomore, young, relatively young guy, getting a chance to shine on that stage and making the most out of his opportunities. Obviously, first an interception in the fourth quarter, and then you have him forcing a fumble later that led to a Khalil Valentine 23-yard touchdown run, which I believe is the longest in his career at Illinois. Obviously, also a sophomore, but I think a guy that you look at and you say it's good that he's been able to get some shine. He's the second, I think the second time he said it's the second game he's played in this season. Obviously, only 2 games, but he got more opportunity, is my point. And the fact that he was able to do that and that he was able to make that sort of impact early on with this team, I think it speaks well to what the kind of depth that the secondary has. And so you feel encouraged about that particular part of it. Now we'll get into a couple of the things that I did not like in not just the secondary, but just the defense as a whole. But obviously, when you have that momentum, when you're forcing how many fumbles, when you're getting turnovers, then it's really hard to argue that the defense didn't play up to par. I mean, they every opportunity they were able to get to force something, they were able to do it. And so that part of it is encouraging. And I think a lot of moments you saw, uh, and a lot of moments you saw a couple, plays, a couple of contested throws. And I think the secondary was able to really manage those really well. You just recall a bunch of times where Torrey Cox was on his guy and didn't go. Xavier Scott got only beat once, but credit to him. A lot of the times when he was on his guys, then he was able to hold his own. Obviously, it's something that we come to expect as well. But obviously, an encouraging thing to watch this secondary do as well. Uh, and yeah, straight a heckle with those two huge force, or excuse me, the interception and the forced fumble, just huge on that part of it. But now let's kind of hop into kind of the back into the offensive side of the things and kind of the spearhead that part of it. Luke Altmaier, as always, I think now you keep being encouraged by everything that you see from this guy. It's not just a dude who has been getting can beat up on a couple teams in FCS or whatever. This quarterback has been playing really really well. 296 yards, 3 touchdowns, 71.9 completion percentage. Every single time that you saw this guy make a throw, it felt convicted. It felt like he had conviction every throw, even in the ones that he missed, right? And I think to me, like there's that part of it, but then also the offensive line. It's not like they had their best game today. They struggled a lot. And the fact that he was able to navigate for the most part the pocket, they only had 2 sacks the entire game, which I think is more than what they had against Western Illinois. Ironically, like you would not expect that sort of to be the case, but that's kind of how it all worked out. And Luke Altmaier was really able to navigate the pocket and escape whenever he needed to, and minimized hits that we talked about last game. Maybe there was a sense that he could kind of take advantage or maybe do a lot with against an FCS opponent, and maybe sometimes he went out of his way to kind of take more risk last game. This time around, he did not, and that's encouraging. If you're an Illinois fan, you look at the way that this guy played and the lack, I think, just the awareness that he had in the pocket and that escaping the pocket and not taking all that many awful hits is the thing that you look at and you say you come away very encouraged from. And obviously, the deep throw touch has always been there. Is what we've seen, which we continue to get accustomed to with Luke Altmaier. and it's a lot of it's been a lot of that good stuff. So I think overall that part of it has been awesome as well, awesome to see as well. There were a lot of times where I thought that Luke was able to Luke made the right plays, right? Like there were not too many times where I thought that there were not too many times where this team was, you know, where Luke Altmaier was putting these guys in positions that you didn't want them to be in. Uh, that's that part of it has been great in on that side of things as well. In the rushing attack, obviously, uh, Brett Bielema's talked about the different flavors that exist within this team, the different flavors that exist in the running backs in specific, with Caden Fagan as a guy who I think will is supposed to replace the production that that last year he was supposed to be the guy, but obviously that's not how it worked out because of the injury. I think in the red zone, this is the guy who's going to be taking the ball and going up the middle, going on the side. I do think there are a couple times where Caden Fagan just does not just I don't know. It just feels like he goes straight into his guys. He goes straight into the wall. And I understand the physicality that this guy has and maybe the ability that he could have to bulldoze through, but I just think that he's way better when he, looks and he uses his vision to be able to navigate through the trenches. That's just me. But that's what I think about that side of things as well. Uh, but the guy who continues to impress me is Khalil Valentine, right? A guy who had how many? He had a 23-yard rushing touchdown today. I think that's the longest in his career. And a dude who had what did he have in this game? He had 44 yards, and every single time this guy gets the ball, like I feel like a lot of he has explosive, traits that I feel like anytime he could get the ball, especially on that early jet sweep was interesting. I was like, "Whoa!" Like I've not seen Barry Lunny go into that side of his bag all that often throughout the past year that I've been covering Illinois football. But to be honest, it was a thing where I look at Khalil Valentine and I think, "Wow, like this is a dude who I get excited with whenever he has the ball in his hands, and just the shiftiness of this guy." Uh, uh, you come away very encouraged in that side of things as well. I don't know where Aiden Lawfrey ended up being for the rest of this game after the first couple touches that he had, but overall, really impressed for what Khalil Valentine has largely been able to do throughout this early part of the season. Definitely emerging. Like I would say this is a guy who's really emerging. I would think that this guy in later games could be a candidate to really have a breakout game at some point where they just feed him the ball and you look at it and you say, wow, yeah, like this is the dude who can put carry kind of at least a quarter, I don't know, a half of a game and rely on him if you want to. I personally, I think that that was the case for this guy, and I think that in the future that it would be encouraging. I would love to see a game where you just go to Khalil Valentine. Obviously, rotate your guys through, but it feels like Cole Valentine can use this year as a year to build up that really the reps, and then who knows what the ceiling is with this particular guy as a running back. In that case as well. I think in terms of receivers, like you look at Hank Beatty continues to be a guy who Luke goes to. And obviously the relationship's been there. Obviously the relationship has grown. And it feels like out of every receiver Luke is playing with right now, he's the most synced up with Hank. Hank had what did he have? He had did I write this down? He had what 48 yards? No, that was Caden Fagan. But you look at the way that this guy played throughout this game, and you definitely feel encouraged because kind of a lot of the really the similar plays and the similar play style, just taking the in routes and receiving the ball in the down the middle, which I think is awesome. But yeah, Hank Beatty with 8 receptions, 128 yards, a touchdown, and a long of 36. Uh, every time that Luke went to him, they didn't miss. And I think you come away really good. Even that 25-yard touchdown, uh, rushing touchdown is a pretty elusive play, pretty interesting play. The way that they put that one together, and I think they were talking after in the post game Luke just couldn't help but smile at like the amount that goes into that play, but getting the chance to use that play at that particular moment, I think was cool for them as well. But Hank Beatty, obviously, I think he is starting to for me, and then obviously it's early, and we really won't know. We really won't be able to really look back and kind of understand all of this in its totality until we get past the Indiana game. I think, or once we see what that looks like against an Indiana team that should be really really good, then I think that we'll be able to assess the wide receiver kind of alpha of it all, because that's the word that Luke used, right? He wants the guy to emerge as an alpha. And so I think that it in large part, this is the alpha point one. You're like, 1A alpha, right? Like, this is the guy who you look at scouting reports are going to look at for every game. You're like, we got to take care of this guy. We got to find a way to address this particular guy. And to me, that's a little surprising, just purely based on size. It's not surprising in the fact that they literally were saying this whole time, and a guy who was the third receiver behind Pat Bryant and Sakari Franklin. But uh, now he's getting his shot. And I honestly just purely based on size is why I thought I had my hesitancies. But it really looks like this is a dude who has been playing really, really, really good. I think that hopefully he'll be able to continue the way he's been playing. Uh, but definitely, I think encouraging in terms of that. But speaking of size, uh, Justin Bowick is a guy who they continue to go at in the red zone, which to me is like at this point, and obviously it's only game two, but I mean, I think this is a dude who they are really, really trying to, what's the word, to pipeline. This is a guy they're trying to really, really push to be that a red zone target. I can't tell you that with certainty. I can't tell you that that's what I've been told, but that is actions speak louder than words, right? When I asked Coach Justin Stepp, wide receivers coach Stepp, about, you know, is the idea to use him as the primary like red zone back, and he said, everyone. But with that being said, I do think that along with the couple, maybe Cole Rush, and we'll get into that later. But I do think that because of the size, because of the guagi of it all, the go up and get it of it all, that Justin Bowick is being fast paced, or not fast paced, pipelined, or being fast tracked into the role of uh and red zone wide receiver. Obviously, that touchdown was great that he had on that particular play, but he also had another touchdown early in the first quarter, I believe, and that ended up in at the 1 yard line. Like, you cannot tell me this isn't what you're like projecting for this guy. Now, we talked about it being kind of a test run against Western Michigan. This was much more like a serious step up. And if you can establish this guy's confidence, if you can determine that this is a dude who you want to go to every time you're in the red zone, then or not every time, but obviously, this if you determine that this is one of those deep red zone targets, then you've made significant progress in terms of where you're at with all these wide receivers, especially just because Justin Bowick is relatively new in this program. Like, I mean, it's his first year, and he had never played a Big Ten snap in his life. So like every single time this guy's been on the field this thus far this season, like it's been literally the biggest stage of his career. Like probably not that Duke game, just purely because of stadium size and all that. But I mean that first game against Western Illinois and to open at Memorial Stadium, like that had been the biggest stage of his career up until then. So you look at that and you think, well, they're really trying to emphasize him in the red zone. Then and who can blame them though? Like it's the size and the physical tools are undeniable. And so if they can continue doing that, then I think Illinois will be in a really good spot in terms of their wide receiver core. Because obviously, like just purely because of how many pieces and the production that they lost in Sakari Franklin and Pat Bryant, there comes questions about how they would handle this new wide receiver core. And so far, they've been able to really do it well. And obviously, in the end, how good will Duke be? I suspect they'll still be good. Like, I suspect this is a team that will still be like pretty decent throughout the year. And it, I think this is one of those games where I think this was more of a pro Illinois game than an anti Duke game in terms of Duke is not that awful. Like Illinois did not just beat up on another, just another just low, low quality team. Like Duke is a quality team. I think Illinois is proving that they're really as good as their ranking says. And that should get you excited. That should get you excited for where this team could be headed at. Coming into this game, we thought that this was going to be a close one. We were worried that Illinois would be not able to handle the scene, maybe the expectations, and maybe would get some jitters going far in the south. Uh, Maybe they would get some jitters going far, traveling a significant number of miles to play that game. But boy, did they prove everyone wrong. And, you know, there were definitely people out there saying that Illinois, especially fans locally, thinking, geez, it's Illinois. They're going to find a way to lay an egg. And so far, it's been proven wrong. But there were also, people on the other side of things that were like, okay, this could be a thrashing of Duke. And largely, the scoreboard indicates that it was. But there are obviously things that I think Illinois needs to work on to really feel good about their football going into week 4, which is going to be key as we've talked about it extensively. I think that. Oh yeah, I was continue talking about the wide receiver. Sorry, I lost it for a second. Um, and kind of diving a little bit more into the, I guess, nitty gritty. I mean, you're encouraged, right? Just Colin Dixon, 36 yards, touchdown, good stuff, right? I still think that with Luke, there needs to be more. They're one of the two guys that I look at and I say, yeah, the whole thing about syncing up, I think that it refers to Colin Dixon, like one of the guys who I think Luke still is working on to really sync up. I think it's come faster for Justin Bowick than it's come faster for Colin Dixon, which to me is surprising because obviously Colin Dixon's been in this program longer. But now long of 33 and then, six targets for 3 receptions. I think you come away pleased with what Colin Dixon was able to do today, especially just because of, there's only going to be so many receptions and sometimes you're going to get a guy who's going to get lost in the mix. So simply that's kind of the way things are. Oh boy, I just spilled a little bit of water. All right. Let's move on. Hudson Clement, I also think that you're really pleased in terms of what you saw, 39 yards, 2 receptions. Um, you look at, and I think, obviously who's come away more benefited from these first couple games, Justin Bowick, but obviously, I still think that there are encouraging signs, that you got for Hudson Clement. And I am concerned Guys, I am concerned about one Malik Elzy. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think preseason I talked about this. The fact that the narrative and the fact that the stuff that they were saying, they were telling us, the coaching staff was telling us about the wide receivers. That Hank Beatty and Colin Dixon were the two guys coming in. It was like, oh, these are two guys they're really trying to sell us on. And I get it. I get it. Obviously, like, you wanna inspire your guys to be really good. You wanna, say good stuff in the media for them so that, they can feel that confidence going into the season and all that. But I was confused as to why like Malik Elzy had not been talked about really all that much. And I think so far you've seen why. Right? He hasn't played all that many snaps. He had 3 targets in this game, 2 receptions, 21 yards. I mean, great. Yeah, probably just first down conversion or 11 yards, which is good, but we just haven't like you would think that, a guy from Chicago, really high level recruitment job by Brett Bielema, you would think that we would see this guy at this point, that this would be the guy who would step up, that this would be the Justin Bullock, maybe even that, all those things that Justin Bullock is getting, all those receptions that he's getting, all the opportunities he's been getting. I think you would have thought that Malik Elzy would have gotten those opportunities just based on the similarity in terms of size. And that's just me though. Like, but I just don't understand. I don't quite understand like why we haven't and maybe part of it is because, on that one reception, near reception he had, or what would have been maybe the third the third reception he would have had, what almost was a fumble. Like that's concerning stuff. Like good for them, good for him that it wasn't a fumble, but that's concerning, right? Like the fact that like the a couple of times that you do see this guy in the game, that sort of thing happens, you get a little confused, right? And I think that it's given me pause. The fact that they just haven't talked to the only way that we know how these guys are like playing is based on what they tell us. Like most of the times when they tell us, oh, that Khalil Valentine's been playing really good, like, yeah, sure, like it gets backed up in on the field, but we only see game days. Like it's not like we're at practice. And that's why, Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon was like, okay, cool. Like these are supposed to be the top dogs. Obviously, Justin Bogue's now in that mix. I think Hudson Clement's also been getting a significant couple targets as well, and has been playing pretty decent and just seeing the field. But Malik Elzy has been kind of out of the mix, and so it's given me pause, and I'm still a little worried. I'm just still a little worried. And obviously, maybe there'll be a game in the future. I'm not saying that there won't be, but there'll be a game in the future. Maybe that he'll be a guy that is used primarily. Maybe that could be a possibility as well. But just so far, based on what they've shown us, it's not the case. So I wonder what's going on with Malik Elzy, because that's one of the guys I thought coming into this season you'd be like, okay, this could be one of those guys that you could trust. But so far, it just looks like it hasn't been the case, which is unfortunate for the guy. But there's still plenty of season left, and the book hasn't been written on this Malik Elzy guy. So that's something as well. Maybe it is the whole thing about getting synced up and stuff. I think, all right, moving on. I think a big shout out has to go to Cole Rusk for, I wonder what that moment was like for him, right? You tear your ACL in fall camp of last year. You decide to stay at Illinois. You come back for a season, now it opens up a bunch of 11-person, 12 personnel options for Barry Lunny and his offense. And you get that touchdown. First touchdown as an Illini. Good for him, man. Like you know, coming into the season, the idea was that you would probably use this guy significantly because Tanner Arkin was used a lot last season. Like he was like the only tight end that was like primarily used last season, and so you thought, okay, like this is gonna be good for one Tanner Arkin, and it has been. But just for him to get that touchdown, Luke Allmeyer said after the game that obviously he's his best friend. To have that moment with him was probably really cool, and so that's that's awesome to kind of have that be a part of this whole story in its totality. So you come away encouraged by that as well. More water. All right. Let's kind of move on. I think we talked about the things that I was pleased with. The offensive line played really, really, what's the word? Was inconsistent, right? Like the first half was atrocious by this line. It felt like every time that Luke Altmaier, and credit to Luke Altmaier, like I said, was able to navigate the pocket really well and was played pretty efficient, especially for the cards he was dealt with early on in this game. But man, that offensive line was concerning. You come away thinking, oh, that film review is going to be rough, right? It's just the worst part of it all in the macro is the fact that these are the same guys that played last season. Like these are the same guys that have been playing on this line. To have that kind of performance with all five of those guys is concerning. You come away and you probably think next week or week 4, more importantly, focus on week 4 just purely because of the level of competition that you're going to face at Indiana. Like Indiana's pass rush, excuse me, it might have a good time in a couple weeks. They just purely based on what we saw today. Obviously, a couple weeks away from that, but it was concerning for what you saw. The amount of times that the pocket collapsed and Luke Allmeyer was running for his life, it was a lot. Um, there was a couple of sacks in the first half. That credit to them, though. I do think that there were definitely things that they addressed at that half because I want to go to their fourth drive, Illinois' fourth drive of the game. And I go there because at that point, JC Davis had allowed a sack on second down that made it 3rd and 21, I believe. The next play is a screen pass to Hudson Clement. JC Davis rolls out and just delivers a vicious block to a Duke defender, and Hudson Clement's able to go for, I believe it was 27 yards, which was, I think, his longest of the day. Uh, I can look at it right now. To 19 and a half yards. I think it was 17 actually. So 17 yards for Hudson Clement. And like that's the sort of response that makes you feel good about this line. Because, up until then, I think you come away and you think this is concerning. And then on that very same drive, Josh Cruz starts to get chippy with Duke, just Duke's pass rushers or whatever. And there's a sense of tenacity there. There's a sense of just like pissed off. And I think that's great to actually have that like visual frustration and see that and to see the way that they largely had responded to that was encouraging. And hopefully they used that momentum. The second half, they didn't allow a sack. And you saw an offense that was a much more comfortable, not only just the schematic standpoint. Obviously, there were things they changed scheme wise at half, but you felt like the offensive line was much more comfortable than what it was in the first half. But overall, I do think that it was something that you looked at and you were like, okay, like this raises some concerns. All right, defense though. Obviously, we talked about it, but the 5 total turnovers is incredible. Like it's not, you don't usually get that level of production from a defense. So it was really, really great to have, all these different players have their moment of shine. Obviously, Tyrus Strain, you got Gabe Atkins with a strip fumble. You had Matt Bailey with a forced fumble, I believe a recovery as well. Tanner Heckel with a forced fumble as well and an interception. It's just so many guys. It feels like an endless list of guys that to were able to contribute to this, what ended up being a thrashing kind of against Duke, a rout, really a rout of Duke in the end of it, just because of how crooked the score was at the end of this whole thing. But listen, man, there were a couple things. I do think that there were a lot of times where this Illinois front, the trenches, beyond the Gabe Atkins forced fumble, beyond a couple of those forced fumbles, that Darian meant, especially in the first half, there were a couple of times where this Illinois defense had trouble getting to the quarterback. Like it felt like Darian Mensah had time, like significant amount of time to make plays, to find his receivers. In large part, I think the secondary responded really well. The depth of the secondary was solid. There were a couple explosive plays that they let up, but you're always going to have that as long as your quarterback has time and you're able to take that time to find your receiver. It's a game to lose when you're in part of the secondary. That's why the trenches are so important. And in large part, I felt like we didn't see all that much pressure get to the quarterback in that first half. And obviously they kind of switched things up right away. But you look at that film and you say, well, this is concerning. I think in terms of the lack of pressures on the quarterback beyond that Gabe Atkins forced fumble in the first half, first quarter, it was concerning. But I do think that they have some depth to be able to adjust. A lot is said about Terrence Jameson, the defensive line coach, about his attention to detail and the kind of impact he's able to have on this line. So I am curious. I will be curious to see just the way that this defensive line responds, especially given the way that they played in the second half, which was pretty good. As far as the secondary, I do think I was, relatively impressed by the amount of this is a guy. I tweeted this, but um, of course there were a couple of times where okay, like you saw and it was like okay, like this guy okay can be good, but obviously you have your hiccups. I think Torrey Cox goes very underappreciated on this team. The reason I say that is because feels like we don't really talk about this guy, but ever since he first played at Illinois, that first game at Eastern Illinois, I don't think I can recall a time where like he's straight gotten beaten. Like I really don't think I can recall. Credit to him because this is a dude who's like he's practically my height. Like I was shocked. I was floored by seeing this guy in person and being like, dude, we're like the same height. Like I listen, I'm not tall. Yeah, I'm not, I'm not short. I'm not so short, but like in football terms, man, like this guy is practically my height. And like you look at it and you say, and he's able to really compete. There was a time where you thought there was a lot of mix match, or excuse me, a big mismatch between Torrey Cox and I think it was Andro Johnson, uh, Andro Anthony, excuse me. You you come away thinking, all right, like that's impressive. And to me, he's been able to play really well ever since he got to Illinois. And there was only one time where he got beat, but man, the motor that this guy has and the ability he has to stay on his guy is relatively impressive because I don't think that for the most part, he hasn't been a dude who you look at and you think, okay, could someone else come up and grab that job? Ever since he's gotten here, he's taken the job and never let it go. So I think credit goes to him. I think. Um, it just vicious the way that he plays, the style of play that he has. It feels like he pops up on the screen. He pops on the screen is what happens on the field. And obviously he's also noticeable because he's a little bit undersized, but I think you come away really encouraged from what you saw in Torrey Cox. You think this is a dude who it can, if he can continue to play, maybe he will find his way into an NFL team. And I do think that that could be the future that awaits him after this whole college thing, Illinois football thing, kind of wraps up for him. Um, Xavier Scott got beat once, right? I don't think that there's much to be concerned about uh, Xavier Scott, but I do think that overall the secondary was able to handle their business pretty well. Um, so there was that as well. I think special teams. Obviously, we talked about the way that the play that Tyler Strain had. Like that's good for him, man. Like um, special teams make special plays, so that's good stuff. I think Keelan Crimmins had a better day. Obviously, uh, don't necessarily think it like he has the biggest leg on earth, but you did come away thinking this is better to see than what happened last week. Just kind of a weird punt to start the season, but I think you were pleased from what you saw from all three levels of the game, especially in that second half where it just felt like Illinois dominated. And good for them, right? Like if this is really where they belong in the rankings, then this should be the expectation. And, obviously coming into this game, we all thought that this could be one of those games where Illinois could really, really disappoint and lay an egg. They proved us wrong, man. So credit to them. All right, let's talk about the ranking though. Let's talk about the ranking. Where does Illinois land after this week? And I don't necessarily follow the entirety of this college football landscape, but I think you don't listen. Every single time in the first half where you saw Illinois struggle, my thought was the more Illinois keeps struggling, never thought that Illinois was going to lose this game. I don't think that thought ever really creeped into my mind. I always kind of thought that Illinois was going to win this game. It wasn't going to be like I didn't think it would get as crooked as it did, but I really thought that Illinois had all the tools to kind of win this game and take it and never let it go. But with that being said, I do think that there were a couple times in my head where I was like, okay, Illinois is going to win this game, but the more you struggle against this team, the more spots you lose in the ranking. With that second half, with those turnovers, with the way that they played in that second half, especially being on the road, I don't think there's an argument you can make that Illinois drops at all. So I don't know, maybe 10. They keep climbing. I think 10's a good spot. Depends on what happens around the college football landscape, but overall, I do think that this is kind of where Illinois is at, and I think the biggest game I think one of the bigger games of the year is definitely going to be coming soon in Week 4, and I'm so excited to go to that game. I'm so excited to cover that game. I'm so excited to kind of chronicle what will happen then. It should be really, really fun to kind of see the way that is navigated. But yeah, so that'll wrap it up for this iteration of the pod. Once again, I really appreciate everyone listening. Been getting a couple more. Been getting decent feedback, and I've been just enjoying doing this. So please continue to follow along, subscribe, rate, review if you so please. I really, really appreciate everyone listening, and I look at my YouTube numbers, I YouTube my Spotify, whatever. Obviously, like it's just a fun thing that I like to do. I do have a passion for this sort of thing, and uh, just the numbers that have been going up, and I'm grateful just for even just one person listens to this. I really, really hope that I can make you guys smarter or provide some unique content or some takes on Illinois as well and some thoughts. Give a little bit more insight. Hopefully, I know I'm not like the biggest expert here, but do cover the team. So it's been really fun. So continuing to do that, and even just as the numbers trickle up, it's fun to follow that as well. But subscribe, rate, review if you so please. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.